here. Maybe I'll talk about PGD first and carrier screening afterwards. One issue is that I'll just send one thing about carrier testing. So there are many diseases where there's a risk for a child with a disease only if both parents are carriers of the same, of a mutation in the same gene. So in the Jewish community, Tay-Sachs is the most well known, but there are many other such diseases. There are also diseases like BRCA, where it's enough that one parent has the mutation and the child can be at risk. In Israel, we have a very strong program of testing people before they have children to see if they have a risk of having affected children, not for BRCA, but for all of the for childhood mutations. The idea being that we want to prevent affected children. Okay, BRCA is not a childhood disease. We'll talk a little bit about PGD for BRCA later, but I sort of want to make that distinction. Tay-Sachs, cystic fibrosis, these are all terrible diseases that will make a child suffer. So you want to prevent that because you want to prevent suffering in the child that is going to be born. In Israel, there are two models of doing carrier screening. One is, I understand Doria Shorim has also been coming here. What?
No, we're thinking of going to the second country.
Yeah, so I'll just tell you that it exists. It's something that I don't like as much. This is the ultra-Orthodox community where all the marriages are arranged. And what they do is they have young people tested when they're like 17, 18. They get a number. They don't get their result. And the shadchan, the matchmaker, calls up and he says, I want to marry number 242 to number 355. And this is exactly how it happens. And they say yes or no. Okay? And if they say no, then no. If they say yes, they go forward. I dislike the system. I think the system started because there was no other choice in the ultra-Orthodox community. I don't have to tell you that marriage there is it's like a commodity, right? You're marrying this family to this family. Are they good enough? Are they not good enough? Do they have diseases? Are they hiding something? It's a whole situation.
And sorry, this is something that does not apply to Mexico. That's why we were thinking with the Rabbanim here not to bring this.
So I'm glad to hear that because I think
it's not going to work. Imagine you can I marry number 5?
No. So I'll tell you. Doria Shorim is actually in Israel for financial reasons. They're heavily subsidized by our government, and they have now moved into the Dati Leumi community. Okay, but the main problem from my point of view is that people don't get their results. You have a genetic test, you should get your results. Also, it keeps the secrecy and the shame, It's like it makes it sound like it's so awful to learn if you're a carrier for something that you're given a number. God forbid you should actually be told that you're a carrier for something, when in fact each one of us is a carrier of at least 100 bad mutations. So it's, the person who started this whole thing, Michael Kay, back in the States in the 1970s, he used to start talks and he would say, my fellow mutants. And it's true because we all carry a lot of mutations. But in Israel, most people get tested. They don't decide to get married based on mutations, but hopefully true love and romance. But whatever the reason it is they get married, most people have or not get married. Most people have these tests before they have children, and it's largely funded by the government. And you can see that in Israel, diseases, that in the Ashkenazi Jewish community in the world, Tay-Sachs has practically disappeared. Most children born in the world today with Tay-Sachs are not Jewish. They have mutations just because rarely it occurs in other populations. But in Israel also diseases like cystic fibrosis have gone down by 80%, and also not just in Jews. For example, in Arabs, thalassemia is very common. I don't know if thalassemia is common in Mexico. So for example, thalassemia in Israel has been eradicated by 85-90%, and it's largely in the Arab population, but again, because of this kind of screening. Now, okay, let's say you're a couple, you want to have children together. It's not that you prevented your matchmaking, and you're both at risk. What can you do? So one thing is you can get pregnant, and you can get tested during pregnancy, and you can have pregnancy termination. And it's important for me to say that because I'm in favor of people having the option of doing pregnancy termination. And in Israel, it's certain. I don't know what the situation is in Mexico, but in Israel, certainly for a disease, It's possible here. It's legal
In
also.
Depends when.
City.
Mexico
Mexico City,
City. Depends
if you decide to terminate the pregnancy before the week 13, then you're allowed to terminate it by your own will. After that, you must have certain arguments in order to have it.
But if it's a disease, then they will. Then it's allowed.
It's arguable.
Arguable. I see. So in Israel, up to 24 weeks, you don't have to even have a reason in a way. I'm exaggerating a little, but certainly for diseases, and later if there's after week 24, if there's a serious disease, because week 13 doesn't leave you a lot of time, right? Because you can, let's say you know you're at risk, you can have what's called chorionic villus sampling. It's the earlier version of amniocentesis. You can do that around a week 10, 11. So you have to have a result within a week. It's not a lot of. It's a narrow window. Okay, so going back, so the other option is PGD, and I want to say something about PGD because in a non-medical sense, because to me it shows the power of having a vision and a community, I would say spirit and community commitment. And the reason I say this is because just like Rina here is sitting here pushing. So
They all know me.
yeah, no, I understand they all know you. No, I'm saying this as it's a total compliment. I'm saying this in appreciation. So in I think 2002 or 2003, Rabbi David Fuld, he's an American Orthodox Haredi Jew, came to Shaarei Tzedek. And he said he wanted to donate, I think it was like $150,000 for us to set up pre-gestational diagnosis. I'll explain in a second how we do that. I was sitting with Levi, Jonathan Levi is going to be here this week too. He's our CEO. I was sitting in his office with Rabbi Fuld, and Fuld said, "You must set this up." So I said, this is science fiction. Very few places in the world do this. We're not going to be able to do it, blah, blah, blah. Then second, I told Rabbi Fuld, I'm very grateful. I'll take every cent you're willing to give will go to a good cause. But I have to tell you, if that's what you really want to be setting up here, you're going to be investing a lot more than $150,000. So a few $1 million later, but not all just from him. But really, what pushed it, I think, was his vision. And I'll tell you, and actually we celebrated 2 months ago the bar mitzvah of the first boy that was born from PGD. And this is a family that has muscular dystrophy, myotonic dystrophy. And Rabbi Fuld actually was invited and went to the bar mitzvah. And he says, here was this large family. That's actually a disease that's 50% risk for the children. And there are many, many affected people in that family. So he says, there's this bar mitzvah, all these people with walkers, and some of them are in wheelchairs. And here's the bar mitzvah boy, he's standing there, and he's healthy, and he doesn't even understand, like they had Rabbi Fuld talk about it, and this kid, he said, Rabbi Fuld told me, I said, the kid doesn't even say thank you, he doesn't understand. I said, Fuld, that's the best compliment you can receive. A 13-year-old is not supposed to thank you for anything, right? I mean, they're busy being 13, he's happy, that's not what he wants to do. Anyway, so what is PGD? So basically, what we do is, the woman has to undergo in vitro fertilization, meaning she receives drugs. Normally in a cycle, a woman only ovulates one egg. If you get drugs, you can cause ovulation of, let's say, 10, 15 eggs. We try not to go beyond that. I am not a fertility doctor. There are fertility doctors who do that. And then they basically surgically take out the eggs from the woman. They fertilize them with the sperm from the man. And at that point, we have embryos sitting in a dish in the lab. And they start out being one cell, and they divide into 2 cells, 3 cells, so on. So starting at when they're about 8 cells, and up to, let's say, 5 days when you've got, 50 cells, you can take out either 1 cell or a couple of cells out of that embryo. That embryo will continue to develop, but what's really changed things is that we can take that 1 cell or just a few cells and actually do a genetic diagnosis on them and see if that embryo does or does not have the mutation or the disease we're looking for, and then we can return to the woman's womb only embryos that we know are going to be healthy. And like Shira asked, we've had over 750 children born just at Shaarei Tzedek We started in 2004, so in the last 14 years, and the numbers just keep going up and up because there's more and more genetics testing being done. So there's more and more people with genetic problems who come and want to have this done. The advantages of this is obviously that you don't have to do a pregnancy termination. There's an error rate. Fortunately, we have not had errors, but anything a human hand touches has errors. So, excuse me. Obviously, there can be errors, but in general, it means that you don't have to do a pregnancy termination because you're starting out the pregnancy knowing that you're going to have a healthy child. However, it's not a walk in the park. Okay, it's not fun. Doing it the natural way is a lot more fun than having
No, that I'm sure.
IV. What? I never get arguments on that. You have to have IVF, and not every cycle succeeds. And on average, a woman needs between 2 to 3 cycles to achieve a pregnancy. And this is actually the natural thing too, except a couple trying to have a child. Okay,
Exactly.
1 month they don't get pregnant. Exactly, they don't know it. They try again the next month. But here it's all like, well, you put it back, 2 days ago. So now, you wait for the pregnancy test, the beta, to start going up, and so they get tested 2 weeks later. They spend the 2 weeks, waiting, and so it's a difficult, it's a difficult process. Some women are lucky. We've had women who've had 4 or 5 children from PGD every time, just 1 cycle, and we have women who've done 7 and 8 cycles. It depends on the disease. It depends on the age, or many, many factors that go into it. So I just want to say that it can be highly successful. There are, especially for the dominant diseases where there's a 50% risk in every pregnancy, it makes a huge difference. There are some genetic diseases where it's been shown to be much better than trying to take your chances and have a child, like for chromosomal problems. But I just want to make the point that it's that there's an effort involved. Obviously, for the families, when the children are born, it's a huge joy. And we had I think when we had 250 children, which wasn't that long ago because it keeps getting faster, but I think this is like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we had a party for all the children. Some families didn't want to come because they don't want other people to know that that's how they had the children. But I think there were at least 100 children there. It was really unbelievable. So I would say, just saying about Mexico, you have the genetics to do it here, and you have the IVF to do it here. So it's really a question of joining the two. And I want to say something about joining the two. We kept talking about marriage, having children. Sometimes it's a tough marriage, and you want a divorce. So no, I really think there are some models in the States and also in Israel where the IVF lab does the genetics and does the fertility. I think that's a bad model because geneticists know genetics and the fertility doctors know fertility, and I don't know fertility, and believe me, they don't know genetics. And if you start having genetics in the IVF, they're not geneticists. They lose touch with the new stuff, with other developments, and it doesn't work well. But it is, that's another issue. But so I think the best thing is to try to get 2 groups to really work well together, and I think that's really important. The cost is a real issue also. So in Israel, so one thing I can tell you is if you have couples in the Jewish community, send them to Shaarei Tzedek. We actually offer it almost for free to couples who can't afford it, and even those who don't, the Israeli prices are. We've had a lot of couples coming from the States because they figure that coming to Israel for a week at a nice hotel costs less, the whole thing, than doing the whole process. In the States. So.
But it would be 1 week, or it would be.
So what they do is they have the preparation. The woman gets all the drugs and stuff. Takes about a month beforehand. They do all that in the States. And they come to Israel just to have the eggs taken out, the diagnosis being made, the embryos returned, so they stay for about a week. And yeah,
I thought the process was longer.
no, it is long. It is longer, but they can do some of it at home.
Okay.
So that's just another, I mean, I urge you to do it yourselves, but just in the meantime.
Meantime, of
That's
course.
something,
That's a good idea.
that's something that can be, oh, I'm sorry. I
Well,
didn't-
I know some of you, hold on.